So good afternoon, guys. I'm here in a open loft. I actually built this temporarily a couple years ago. It was basically designed to be moved. It's basically just an 8-foot by 8-foot shell with a wire top and then an added roof up there. But these guys are all ironclad blooded birds. A couple of them starting to nest, like this nice grizzle hen. As you know, I'm not a big fan of grizzles, but I do have one. So these guys are all ironclad, or ironclad and Constans and Flavius, and basically the same line of birds. And one of the things I want to talk to today is part of the reason they're in here, and that is the debate on individual breeding pens and the open loft system. And as most of you know, I am a pretty big firm believer in the individual pens as trying to ensure parentage of everything I breed. Because one of the problems with the open loft, depending on your nest box system, I have here these completely open nest box systems. These are prefab 12-inch by 12-inch holes by Rugged Ranch that I put here before I started doing a lot of carpentry work and stuff like that. And one of the problems with open lofts is infidelity. Pigeons, as most of you know, are very promiscuous. If a hen crouches, another cockbird will jump her. Sometimes a second cockbird will jump her, and you never really know what's going on as far as your actual breedings are concerned. And there's actually a lot of variation in infidelity depending on your open systems. Like these sort of systems, you've got an infidelity rate almost of 20% sometimes with this sort of open loft system. You have bigger boxes with no fronts. It's about 10 to 15%. And if you have closed nest fronts, you know, like the doweled fronts I have in the mobile loft where the portfoliates are, your infidelity rate is still about 5 to 10%. That's based on genetic research done by the late Joe Quinn. Those were the numbers he found, and that was across various breeds. So needless to say, infidelity in open loft systems is a problem, and that is the biggest advantage. However, so in spite of being a big fan of the individual coop, as a lot of you know, I use rabbit cages that are basically they're basically 3 foot long by 2 feet deep, and they are roomy. And they do the job well early in the season. The biggest issue I see that my friend Frank McLaughlin's brought this up in one of his videos on the subject, is that the birds just don't do that well in the individual pens like that. And I initially thought maybe it was a competition issue, you know, that maybe you really needed, you know, a colony to really get good breeding results out of birds, and maybe you always needed another cockbird there driving around to kind of inspire your cockbirds to breed the hens and drive them to the nest and all that. And I actually found that wasn't the case. What I actually found was, by doing experimentation in larger individual coops, I found that they bred just fine. I had my #1 pair of portfoliates in a basically an 8x8 loft this size on their own, and they bred great. They just kept going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny, just round after round after round. And what I found is that pigeons, you put them in an individual coop, they tend to, you know, gain weight. They get fat, regardless of how sparingly you feed them. Even if you feed them, you know, only what they will clean up and don't leave them excess food, and even if you don't feed them rich, there's just a tendency for them to The hens get fat, the cocks get fat, fertility goes down on the cocks, the hens don't want to lay. And that's kind of something we know from chickens, that if you get your hens fat, they won't lay. Their egg production will drop, and it's the same way with pigeons. So the individual coop is great for keeping correct track of your parentage on your birds, but there is a downside. You can maybe get 2 rounds out of a pair in an individual coop, and then they'll just slow down. And that's what happened with these guys. The temperature started increasing, they started slowing down, so I decided I'd move them to an open loft. Now, if I had my druthers, I still want the individual coops, but the way I would like to be set up is set up, if you go and you look at some videos of, you know, say Mike Gannis's setup or Ed Miniville's setup, is they use individual lofts for their breeders, for their best pairs. And instead of using an individual cage, it's an individual loft. It might be 4x8 or 6x8 or something like that. And if I had my druthers, that is how I would set things up. And that's kind of what I'm working toward in the future. But it's kind of a Hobson's choice. You know, you can either deal with the lack of, you know, with the infidelity issues that come from an open loft, or you can deal with the decline in the production in the individual coops, that eventually they will kind of start taper off breeding and you won't quite get the amount of rounds you want. But the interesting thing is, these guys had stopped a couple of weeks ago. They hadn't laid for, you know, we're early July. These pairs had not laid since May. And they were in the individual coops, and they stopped completely. And now that they're in the individual coops, there's a couple pairs already inside of a week, down on eggs. They're getting some exercise. They're getting a little more trim, which is good. And they're doing great this way. So, you know, you kind of have to make a choice on what you want to do as far as how to house your birds. It's pretty hot out here at the moment. This guy, I could see him panning this indigo check, that chocolate check with the white flights. He was definitely panting hard. It's about 100 right now. It's pretty hot for here. Like you can see, this guy up here in the corner, he's panting a little too. And I got plenty of water. It's just very, very warm, and I am sitting here, you know, sweating and all that. But you know, when you breed your birds, you have to make a decision. You know, what's more important, is the controlling the parentage or getting the production out of them. You know, like I said, if I had my druthers, I would have individual lofts, you know, 4x8 or 8x8, preferably, you know, preferably the 8x8s for each pair, and breed them that way. But as you all know, that takes a lot of space, and I'm running out of ground space at this point. So I've kind of got to make some decisions on what I'm doing. I'm going to house my, I think my best 2 pair. I'm going to give them individual lofts each. And then the rest, I guess I'm just going to call when I breed. Maybe start them in the individual pens next year and then move them gradually. Because you do get a better result as far as, I think the babies are healthier in the open loft. You seem to get more of them. It's certainly less work. Right now, I have 30 individual pens out there, and I can tell you that when they were full, it was a hell of a lot of work each day. It's like servicing 30 different lofts. Every cage, every pen has to be fed, every pen needs the water changed, every pen needs grit. And it's just a lot of work, especially here in the dog days of summer where it's getting hot. And one of the downsides is when it starts becoming work, it becomes less enjoyable, and it starts taking away from other things you want to do, like just sitting in here and watching the birds and watching how they act. You know, so kind of the choice is yours. But like I said, if I had my druthers, I would do the individual lofts for the top pairs, and then the rest, I think, in open lofts going forward. But that's just kind of what I wanted to talk about today, was the different advantages and disadvantages with the open lofts and the individual pens. So these guys are all doing great. I'm hoping to get another round here before the molt comes, but it is coming. It is warm. So another news today, I sent part of my team and our syndicate to the Florida Derby. Temperatures are really, really hot. It's a bit of a concern shipping this late. Where I'm at, like I said, it's over 100. Fortunately, they will go north to Portland, and it's going to be about 15 degrees cooler up there. And Florida itself is not bad, but it's brutal here. So I'm hoping they're going to get out of the region fast and be on the plane and be on their way, and all will be well. But that is the start of me sending the team to Florida Derby. We have our local club has a syndicate going, and we're sending about, I think it's 32 pigeons we're sending between all of us. So we're basically each sending, I think it's 6 to 8 each, some of us. So that's the plan right now. But I have the first of them on the way. I'm going to aim for the rest to go out next week, and then I'm going to do Pacific Northwest Challenge and hunt for some other late hatch OLRs that take input a little later. Because like I said, with the individual coops, everybody's kind of slowing down. I've got a couple pair out there on eggs in the individual coops, but everybody else slowed down, a couple babies here and there. And some of it depends on the pigeons themselves. I noticed with these ironclad birds, they didn't like the individual coops as much as the other lines. You know, like my Shellens Bold Rumor stuff, my two top pairs, they're actually in the brooder room in individual coops. And they do great. They think it's the best thing on the planet, being in those individual coops. And they just breed and breed and breed. So a lot of it seems to depend on the bloodline. It just, it kind of depends. You have to figure out what works best with your pigeons. But that is it, guys. My phone here is being bombarded by text messages, so I need to, I think it's business related, so I need to find out what's going on there. But that's it, guys. I will see you guys next time. Keep them flying out there.